all that's left of these houses in the city of Ganja. The Azerbaijanis who lived here know they were lucky to escape this rocket attack. The government of Azerbaijan is already threatening retaliation, and not only for this. In recent days, the Armenian armed forces have fired more than 10,000 shells at various cities and settlements of Azerbaijan. Treacherous, cowardly rocket and artillery attacks. But Armenia denies the attacks. Neither artillery shells nor missiles have been launched from the territory of Armenia to the territory of Azerbaijan yet. Armenia accuses Azerbaijan of continuing to shell the disputed region of Nagorno-Karabakh, including its capital.
It was perhaps the most brazen campaign stop in U.S. history. A candidate so sick with a potentially lethal virus that he has taken an experimental cocktail of drugs and at least twice supplemental oxygen, sneaking out of his hospital room and into a hermetically sealed SUV with 2 Secret Service agents waving at the fans lined up outside. As his motorcade took a victory lap on both sides of the street, he tweeted a video explaining why.
I also think we're going to pay a little surprise to some of the great patriots that we have out on the street. And they've been out there for a long time, and they've got Trump flags, and they love our country. So I'm not telling anybody but you, but I'm about to make a little surprise visit.
It was yet another classic Trump moment, and like many Trump moments, it divided America. Thrilling the crowds here in the street, but alarming medical authorities who called the move remarkably irresponsible.
Showered with water cannon, up against rows of armed police and under threat of arrest. Tens of thousands of people remained undeterred and have continued protests for more than 2 months. That's since the opposition says the election on the 9th of August, when President Alexander Lukashenko claimed a landslide victory, was rigged. President Lukashenko denies electoral fraud and was inaugurated last month. These people say they are also angry about police brutality and arbitrary arrests of opposition politicians and protesters. Many gathered outside the walls of Okristina detention centre, shouting, "Let them out." They refer to it as a notorious torture chamber.
Sunday's independence referendum was closely fought and marked by a high turnout. Just under half of voters said yes to ending almost 170 years of French rule, but a narrow majority still voted no. It was the second vote on the issue in 2 years, and while French loyalists prevailed again, the results showed pro-independence forces are getting close to securing a majority. The decolonization plan was agreed to in 1998. It put an end to violence between the mostly pro-independence indigenous Kanak population and the descendants of European settlers. Under the agreement, another referendum can be held in 2022 if that's the will of at least a third of lawmakers. President Emmanuel Macron vowed that France will continue holding its end of the bargain, while declaring himself humbled by Sunday's tight results.
imágenes hablan con elocuencia. El éxodo es masivo.
The California wildfires have set a new record, scorching more than 4 million acres this year, an area twice the size of the state of Connecticut. That's more than double California's previous record in 2018, when the state saw its deadliest blaze that killed 85 people around the town of Paradise. On Sunday, the state's fire agency, CAL FIRE, said over 24 people have died in this year's fires so far, while nearly 8,500 homes and other structures have been destroyed. California has suffered 5 of its 6 largest wildfires in history this year, sparked by heat waves, dry lightning sieges, and overall drier conditions, which climate scientists blame on global warming. The state suffered a prolonged drought from around 2010 to 2017, causing diseases and insect infestations that killed millions of trees.
Moving on now, according to reports, India and the US will be holding the third 2+2 dialogue on October 26th and 27th. The talks will be held in New Delhi. Reports say that the countries will be signing the Basic Exchange and Cooperation Agreement for BECA for geospatial partnership. Now, the agreement is an important precursor to India acquiring armed drones such as MQ-9B from the US, and the unmanned aerial vehicle uses spatial data for pinpointed strikes on enemy targets. India will be able to use geospatial data provided by the US for accuracy of standoff weapons like cruise and ballistic missiles. The communication agreement will allow both the countries to share military information about the threats on land and the Indo-Pacific.
Demonstrators call this a grand national uprising. It marks 3 months of anti-government protests here in Bulgaria. The demonstrators have a wide-ranging list of concerns, including what they see as a lack of accountability of senior members of the judiciary. They're also against recent constitutional reforms they believe will unfairly hand the ruling party the next elections, and a lack of media freedom.
They've been holding demonstrations like this one since early July, demanding that March's elections are brought forward. But the government is refusing to do so.
Members of the European Parliament are discussing the situation in Bulgaria after protest leaders sent a letter to every single one of them. The letter details what the demonstrators say are corrupt government practices.
A holiday paradise, but few are there to enjoy it. Deserted beaches resembling those of the 80s before Bali's tourism boom. Street after street, hardly any shops are open. Plenty closing for good. Big surf stores, even McDonald's in the centre of usual hotspot Kuta. By night, Kuta's party strip is eerie. The problem is Indonesians are now allowed to move between islands, bringing to Bali a COVID explosion. The infection rate more than doubling, with 3,671 cases in September, deaths increasing 6-fold with 207. And those official figures are thought to be just a fraction of the true picture, the testing rate among the lowest in the world.
The British government has come under criticism after newspaper reports that it's considering plans to house asylum seekers offshore on remote islands. Since August, more than 1,000 migrants have made illegal crossings from the French port of Calais. After promising to secure the borders, London is under growing pressure to stop the crossings.
Pictures that made headlines in the UK this summer. People in rubber dinghies making their way across the English Channel seeking asylum. Now the Royal Navy and the Air Force are being deployed to stop them. Nazir is on the French side at the port of Calais, trying to figure out when he can cross. The city's been an asylum transit hub for years. But infrastructure for the almost 1,500 refugees is practically non-existent. A tent city on the edge of a road, little electricity or access to running water.
A fresh start after a 6-month school closure. At the Queen Elizabeth School for Girls in Harare, morning assembly takes place like normal, though these times are anything but. There is disinfectant on arrival and students have their temperatures taken before they can open a book. The classrooms are missing one thing though, teachers. They've gone on strike over wages and hygiene concerns.
Teachers have lost their ranking in terms of our society. It's actually an insult to be a teacher, it's a curse, and people are simply saying if government is honest, address the problems so that we don't have people who are coming 100% every day to school, yet they are physically absent, yet they are psychologically absent in these schools.
The strike has hampered the return to school this week. Zimbabwe is phasing in slowly, starting with students who are about to graduate.